If you're listening to this in November, you know exactly where you are right now. You're in survival mode. You're trying to make it to Thanksgiving break, and then after that, you're just trying to make it to Christmas. The days feel long, but somehow the weeks are flying by. And somewhere in between all of that, the lessons, the parent emails, the meetings, the behaviors you're managing, there's this mountain of grading that just keeps growing. You're bringing work home in your bag or crate. You're grading on your couch after your kids go to bed. You're spending Sunday afternoons with a stack of papers and some caffeine that you probably shouldn't be drinking that late in the day. And your planning period, that's not for planning anymore. That's for grading, because the grading never stops. You feel stuck, you feel guilty, and you feel like maybe if you were just a little faster, a little more organized, a little more on top of things, you wouldn't be drowning like this. Today, I want to give you permission to do something that might feel wrong at first, something that might feel a little rebellious, but I promise you, it's actually one of the smartest moves you can make as a teacher. I'm going to talk about grading during class. And before you think, wait, isn't that lazy? Isn't that what bad teachers do? No, it's not lazy. It's strategic. It's protective of your time and your sanity. And honestly, it's better for your students. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Secondary Teacher Podcast, the podcast for middle and high school teachers juggling multiple preps to get the strategies to reduce overwhelm so that you don't have to choose between being an effective teacher and prioritizing important relationships. I'm your host, Kristen Masick, a 10-year high school engineering teacher, former middle school assistant principal, and teacher coach. Every week, we will discuss strategies, systems, and time-saving tips to help you not only survive but thrive as a multiple prep teacher. Let me take you back to when I first started teaching. I was teaching a careers class and my students had these booklets. They were workbook style booklets where we'd work on a few different pages every week during class. Students would be writing, answering questions, doing some reflection activities, and then every Friday, they would turn them all in. And every Friday, without fail, I would get to take home a huge crate full of booklets to grade over the weekend. Now, I did have a system. I wasn't just randomly flipping through booklets. I got pretty efficient at it, actually. I'd have all the booklets open at the same page, and I'd grade one page for all the students at once, stack them all up, flip to page 12, grade page 12 for everyone, move to the next page. And I had 3 or 4 class periods of this course. Each class had about 30 students. So I'm talking about 90 to 120 booklets every single week. That's a lot of booklets. But I thought, okay, I've got this. I'm being efficient. I've got a system. This is just what teachers do. And for a while, that was fine. I mean, it wasn't ideal. My weekends were eaten up by grading, but I thought that was just part of the job. Until one day, I had this realization. What was I doing during class while students were working independently on these booklet pages? I was doing nothing, or I was doing something else. Maybe I was prepping for my next class. Maybe I was answering emails. Maybe I was just sitting at my desk making sure students were on task. But I wasn't using that time to grade. I wasn't circulating. I wasn't checking in on what they'd already completed. And then it hit me. Wait, I should be walking around and giving them points for what they've already finished right there in class so I don't have to take anything home. I could be grading in real time. I could be seeing their work as they were doing it. I could be giving them feedback that they could actually use instead of waiting until the following Monday to hand back their booklets with the score at the top. That shift changed everything for me. Now, before I go any further, I do want to point out a nuance here, because I posted a reel recently about this exact topic and someone commented that you shouldn't grade during class, especially when you're being observed by an administrator. And it took me a second to realize what I think that teacher meant, because at first I was like, wait, what? Why not? But then I understood. I think what they were picturing was a teacher who sends students off to do independent work, maybe a worksheet, maybe a reading assignment, and then just sits at their desk on their computer getting other work done. Maybe they're entering grades from another class. Maybe they're planning tomorrow's lesson. Maybe they're catching up on emails. And yeah, we don't want to do that, because that really does make it look to an administrator like you've just shut off your teaching, like you've checked out. Like the students in the room don't deserve your time and attention in that moment. Now, I don't think that's what this teacher is intending to portray. I really don't. But that's what it looks like from the outside. So let me be really clear about what I mean by grading during class. You are not sitting at your desk ignoring students. You are not zoning out or multitasking on something unrelated. You are circulating the room. You are looking at what students are doing in real time. You are giving them points, credits, checks, feedback, whatever your system is as they work. You are present. You are engaged. You are actively teaching. You're just not taking work home. That's the difference. So here's what it looked like in practice for me. When I started doing this, I would walk around with either an iPad, once we got iPads in our building, or just an old school pen and paper with a blank assignment log or a roster. I would check off what students had done. I could jot down quick notes. I could mark who was on track and who needed extra support. Most of the time, I was grading for completion rather than accuracy, because let's be real, if students are working on practice problems or a booklet page, I don't necessarily need to grade every single answer for accuracy in that moment. What I need to know is, are they engaging? Are they trying? Are they on the right track? And if they're not, I can intervene right then. I can clarify a misunderstanding. I can redirect. I can give them support they need before they practice the wrong thing 20 more times. But I could also grade for accuracy if I needed to. This approach became especially powerful when I started teaching classes with big projects, like my architecture class, where students were working on a semester-long house project. They had several different plans they needed to complete: floor plans, elevations, site plans, all of it. When I first started teaching that class, I did what a lot of teachers do with big projects. I let students work on them throughout the semester, and then in the last week, or sometimes just a few days before the grading period ended, they'd turn in a massive complete project. And because I didn't know any better at the time, I had everything worth 100 points. The whole project, 1 grade. And if they were late, I'd mark them down every day it was late. Hindsight, that was way more work for me than it needed to be, because now I'm tracking who's turning things in on time, who's turning things in late, why they're turning it in late, what their excuse is, whether I'm going to accept that excuse. It was exhausting. And here's the other thing. It didn't even show me what students had actually learned. I was grading behavior, timeliness, compliance, whether they followed the rules, not mastery of the content. So I shifted my approach entirely. Instead of having everything due on one final day, I created checkpoints throughout the project timeline. I'd still have a final due date for the complete project, but along the way, there would be mini deadlines. For example, by next Thursday, you should have your floor plan drafted, or by the end of this week, your elevations should be complete. Students knew when the checkpoints were. I put them on the calendar. I reminded them regularly. There were no surprises. And when they were doing independent work time in class, when they were drafting, designing, problem solving, I could come around with my iPad or my rubric and I would check who had met that checkpoint. If they had, I'd give them points right then. Check, done, move on. If they hadn't quite met it yet, I'd give them feedback in the moment. Hey, your dimensions are off here. Let me show you how to fix that. Or you're missing this required element. Make sure that you add it before the final submission. And here's the beautiful thing. They could fix it instantly, right there in the moment, while I was standing next to them. They didn't have to wait a week to get their project back with a bunch of red marks and corrections they didn't understand anymore because they'd already moved on mentally. The feedback was timely, and timely feedback is the kind of feedback that actually changes student learning. This reminds me of another teacher I used to observe all the time when I was an assistant principal. He was a great teacher, really thoughtful. He had these incredibly detailed rubrics for his projects, like thorough, well-designed rubrics that clearly communicated expectation. But here's what would happen. He would spend so much time giving feedback on those rubrics, writing comments, circulating criteria, scoring each section, that by the time students got their rubrics back, they were already turning in the next project. So let's say they had a midterm project. He'd collect it, take it home, spend hours grading it with all the detailed feedback, and then 2 weeks later, he'd hand it back. But by that point, students were already deep into their final project. They'd been working on it for a week or more, and they'd be making the same mistakes the whole time, mistakes he had identified on the midterm project, but they didn't know about those mistakes yet because the feedback wasn't back. So the feedback, while well-intentioned and thorough, wasn't useful anymore. It was too late. That's the risk we take when we take everything home to grade. We lose the window of opportunity where feedback can actually make a difference. But when you grade during class, when you're circulating and checking in and giving real-time feedback, students can course correct immediately. They're not repeating mistakes. They're not practicing the wrong thing. They're getting better as they go. And that's what teaching is supposed to be about. So let me break down what grading during class did for me and what it can do for you. Win number 1, I didn't have to take things home anymore. That crate of booklets I was hauling home every Friday, gone. Those stacks of projects on my dining room table, gone. Those Sunday afternoons where I'd sit with a pile of paper and feel resentful because I was working instead of being with my family, gone. I was getting my grading done during contract hours, during the time I was already being paid to be at school, which meant my evenings were mine again. My weekends were mine again. And that one shift made me a better teacher because I wasn't exhausted all the time. I wasn't burnt out. I wasn't constantly behind. I had space to breathe. I had space to think. I had space to actually enjoy teaching again. Number 2, my students were getting much more timely feedback. This is the one that really surprised me because I thought I was doing a good job with feedback before. I had my systems. I was getting things graded and back to students within a reasonable time frame, usually within a week. But when I started grading during class, the feedback loop got so much faster. Students weren't waiting days or weeks to find out if they were on the right track. They were getting feedback in the moment when they could actually do something about it. And that changed the whole dynamic. Instead of students turning something in and then mentally moving on, they were getting immediate confirmation or correction. They were learning faster. They were making fewer repeated mistakes. They were more engaged because they could see their progress in real time. Honestly, this made me a better teacher, not because I was working harder, but because I was working smarter. Win 3, I was able to start using my planning period to actually plan. This one might be the biggest one of all, because here's what was happening before. Grading was eating up all my time. It was happening all the time during my planning period, after school, at home, on weekends. Grading was the thing I was always doing, and planning was taking second place to grading, or third place, or sometimes no place at all. I'd walk into class with a half-baked lesson because I hadn't had time to really think it through. I'd feel like I was just surviving instead of thriving. But when I shifted my grading into class time, when I stopped taking it home, my planning period, it became what it was supposed to be. It became time to prep, time to think, time to design meaningful learning experiences for my students, time to differentiate, time to anticipate where students might struggle and plan to support them. My teaching got better, my lessons got better, my students' learning got better, all because I stopped taking grading home. So look, I know this might feel uncomfortable at first. You might feel like you're not doing enough. You're cutting corners. Like real teachers take work home and spend their evenings grading because that's just what you're supposed to do. You might worry about what it looks like to your administrator if they walk in and see you grading during class time. You might worry about what other teachers will think. You might worry that parents will judge you. But here's what I want you to hear, especially right now in November when you're in survival mode and you're just trying to make it to the next break. Grading during class time isn't lazy. It's smart. It protects your prep time. It protects your brain space. It protects your relationships outside of school. It keeps you from burning out before Thanksgiving. And honestly, it's better for your students. They get better feedback. They get to fix mistakes before they become habits. They get to see you as present and engaged, circulating, checking in, supporting them, not buried under a pile of papers you'll grade later when you're exhausted. You don't have to prove yourself by taking work home. You don't have to sacrifice your evenings and your weekends to be a good teacher. I talked about this in a previous episode, but I want to say this again because it's so important. Being realistic about how much you can do is a form of self-care, and grading during class is one way to practice that. It's a way to set a boundary. It's a way to say, I'm going to do my job during my contract hours, and then I'm going to go home and be present for my life. That's not lazy. That's healthy. That's sustainable. And if you want to be teaching 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you need to start building sustainable practices now. So if you're hearing this and thinking, okay, I want to try this, but I don't even know where to start, let me give you some really practical next steps. Start small. You don't have to overhaul your entire grading system tomorrow. Pick one class, pick one assignment, pick one thing you're doing this week where students will be working independently as part of the class period. Maybe it's a worksheet, maybe it's a reading response, maybe it's a practice problem set, maybe it's work time on a project. Whatever it is, instead of collecting it at the end of class and taking it home to grade, walk around while they're working. Check off who's completed it, give a quick glance to see if they're on track. Mark it in your gradebook right then. You don't have to grade every detail. You don't have to score every question. Just give them credit for doing the work. Give them feedback if they need it, and move on. Use a simple tracking system. You don't need anything fancy. I used to literally just have a piece of paper with student names on it. Check, check, check. Or I'd use my iPad with a simple spreadsheet, or even just a notes app, whatever works for you. The point isn't to have a perfect system. The point is that you're getting the grading done in the moment, so you're not taking it home. Communicate with students. Let them know what you're doing. Tell them, I'm going to be walking around and checking your work as you go. If you have a question, flag me down. If you're finished, I'll come by and give you credit. This actually helps with classroom management too, because students know you're going to be checking. They're more likely to stay on task. Give yourself grace. This might feel weird at first. You might not get through everyone in one class period. You might miss a few students and have to come check them the next time. That's okay. You're building a new habit, and new habits take time. But I promise you, once you start doing this regularly, it gets easier. And you'll wonder why you ever did it any other way. If you're in that place right now where grading feels like it's taking over your life, where you're constantly behind, constantly bringing work home, constantly feeling guilty, I want you to try this. Just try it once this week. Pick one assignment, one class, and grade it during class instead of taking it home. See how it feels. See what opens up for you. See if your evenings feel a little lighter. I just want you to know this. You don't have to keep doing things the way you've always done them. You don't have to keep sacrificing your time and your sanity to be a good teacher. There's a smarter way, and grading during class is part of the smarter way. If today's episode was helpful to you, it could be for others. So make sure you share it with your colleagues and tag me on Instagram at Kristen Masick, KristenMassick. Until next week.